Cassette over it. De Bruyne! Another sip of a goal. De Bruyne! Oh, oh. He's in the mood. What a day!
I'm just a quiet person, shy person.
Let me talk! Let me talk! Let me talk!
And that's been given to me as difficult, so in the end you're like...
Huffed, an unpredictable personality. Kevin De Bruyne is a unique personality. From his unpredictable personality, he has even suffered bitterness after bitterness in his life. Fortunately, he found loved ones who made him who he is today. De Bruyne is a boy who rarely talks. Since childhood, he has been known to be quiet in his neighborhood. The child born in Drongen, Belgium in 1991 was also relatively shy. But De Bruyne was lucky to be born into an economically healthy family. His father Herwig and mother Anna is a super busy businessman. Since childhood, De Bruyne was often invited to move around the country for his parents' business needs. If you become a child like De Bruyne, you must be happy. You see, anything is also obeyed. Like when De Bruyne was 4 years old. That was when he first played football. His parents bought him good football boots to support his hobby. But at one point, De Bruyne rebelled when accompanied by his parents playing football. The little blonde-haired boy even looked unhappy and uncomfortable. He wanted to be like his peers who could be independent. De Bruyne used to play football with a plastic ball with his friends in Drongen. It was in this small Belgian village that De Bruyne spent his time playing football. De Bruyne started joining a football academy at the age of 6, precisely at the KVE Drongen Academy. But only 2 years there, he dared to tell the Drongen coach that he wanted to leave and join the Ghent Academy. The reason is that the facilities and training methods at Ghent are considered better than KVE Drongen. When he first joined the Ghent Academy, De Bruyne was an unruly student on the pitch. He seemed to have his own tactics and often rebelled against the coach. Rarely did he carry out his coach's instructions. Well, from his attitude, it has only been a season since De Bruyne was expelled from the Ghent Academy. Despite being expelled from Ghent, De Bruyne was not discouraged. Instead, he decided to be desperate to get away from his parents. After getting permission from both parents, De Bruyne traveled to Genk, a city that takes 2 hours from Drongen. The goal is to join one of the academies of the KRC Genk club.
Well, I moved away from my parents when I was 14. First year I was in that big school where you sleep overnight with every people, and then luckily the second year I went to foster parents.
De Bruyne started a new chapter, but quiet and shy by nature, he didn't socialize much with his new friends in Genk. All he did was play football, and his Sundays off were spent traveling back to Drongen. When he returned home, his parents asked him, "Don't you get bored playing football?" De Bruyne replied casually. He said that by playing football, any problems could disappear instantly. He was happy and comfortable playing football. In fact, he calls football an obsession and his chosen path in life. While at the Genk Academy, De Bruyne met Frank Delane. He was Genk's academy coach at the time. However, instead of a positive impression, De Bruyne was scolded by the coach. He was reprimanded for not helping to clean the field after the field. Instead of accepting the reprimand, De Bruyne was furious. From there, Delane concluded that De Bruyne was a stubborn and angry person. He is the type of player who does not hesitate to rebel if something is not in accordance with his way of thinking. Once Delane even reprimanded De Bruyne for insinuating his senior Elianiv Brada for not playing in totality. At a time when De Bruyne was starting to be known as an unruly and rebellious person, then something terrible happened to him. It was a personal matter about his adoptive parents. So, while living in Genk, he had a kind of foster parent that the club hired for its young players. His parents in Drongen knew about it. One day, when he went back to Drongen for the weekend, his mum said something that might be the whip for his life. His mum got word from his adoptive parents in Genk that De Bruyne had a problem with his personality. The other young players at Genk found it difficult to interact with him because De Bruyne was difficult to approach. De Bruyne was even uniquely nicknamed by his friends as Tumbler Dryer because he was so quiet. He just locked himself in his room after training. Hearing the story, his mother cried. His mother's tears brought tears to De Bruyne's eyes. At the same time, De Bruyne was also very upset as to why his adoptive parents had said this to his mother rather than to him directly. The quiet man immediately vented his anger in the park near his home. He kicked a ball for hours against the fence while saying loudly that within 2 months he had to be in Genk's first team. He didn't want to return home a failure out of pity for his mum. De Bruyne's belief and persistence eventually paid off. De Bruyne's performance has improved rapidly since then. At the age of 17, he had started strengthening Genk's first team. Now the funny thing is, after De Bruyne proved his capacity on the field, not long afterwards, De Bruyne's adoptive parents wanted to adopt him back. "It's good," said De Bruyne. De Bruyne flatly refused and chose to live independently in Genk. Year after year, season after season, Genk continued to need De Bruyne on the pitch. The Drongen-born player became one of Genk's potential wonder kids at that time. The peak, he won the Belgian Pro League in the 2010-11 season, so that Chelsea is interested in buying it. De Bruyne's arrival at Stamford Bridge was originally intended to be a long-term replacement for Frank Lampard, but De Bruyne was immediately loaned out to Werder Bremen for a season because he was considered not too mature at the level of competition as tight as the Premier League. De Bruyne had met Jose Mourinho at Chelsea. However, his relationship with Mou did not go well. He only spoke a little with Mou during his Blues uniform. What is best remembered is when he was cheated by Mourinho. The Portuguese passport coach promised De Bruyne a place in the first team, but the promise was not fully fulfilled. De Bruyne did play in the first team. It's just that the minutes to play are few. The special one rarely played De Bruyne. Even more sickening, De Bruyne did not get an explanation from Mo why he was rarely played. Until one day, De Bruyne's mood was completely destroyed after hearing directly Mourinho blatantly disliked him after the match against Swindon in the League Cup. Since then, De Bruyne's heart has been cut to pieces. He experienced more bitterness in his life. He again had to be wasted.
Yeah, it was a top team. I understand how it also works for the young guys in every club. When you get loaned out, come back, loaned out, come back, and I didn't want that situation anymore.
De Bruyne also chose to reorganize his career at Wolfsburg. To hell with the matter of no longer being needed by Chelsea. However, at Wolfsburg, De Bruyne had to accept another heartbreaking story. But this time it's not from the field, but his love affair. De Bruyne is already in a relationship with Caroline Leinen, a Belgian girl he has been dating since 2012. Unfortunately, when he was really in love with his girlfriend, his compatriot was secretly in a relationship with Caroline. That person is Thibaut Courtois. The Belgian goalkeeper was caught dating Caroline. Feeling cheated on, De Bruyne chose to break up with Caroline. Then he expressed it in an autobiographical book published in 2014 entitled Keep It Simple. In the book, De Bruyne felt betrayed by two people at once. His relationship with Courtois was also hot at the Belgian national team training camp because of the affair. However, De Bruyne is not like a child who then fights Courtois because his girlfriend was stolen. He was sincere and made it a lesson for his life. He did not want to make the Belgian national team chaotic just because his girlfriend cheated on him with his own teammate. One death grows 1,000. Losing Caroline was not the end of the world. Several times he then tried to find a new mate for his heart. Uniquely, De Bruyne's new love story began with his tweets on Twitter. De Bruyne was introduced to another Belgian girl named Michelle Lacroix via Twitter. However, he was not introduced directly, but through his friend who sent a short message via Twitter, DM. You know, De Bruyne is a quiet and shy person. Yes. Thankfully, the girl responded positively to his introduction to De Bruyne. Since then, De Bruyne has become closer to Michelle. A romance was then formed between the two. Fortunately, Michelle was a good girl, unlike Caroline, who was willing to be cheated on. Michelle really changed the quiet boy's life. Oh yes, the beautiful Belgian girl also helped her husband move on from the bitterness of his life in the past. Until finally, De Bruyne was determined to marry Michelle. De Bruyne was finally able to feel comfortable raising a family. Until one day in the 2015 transfer market, he was faced with two crucial moments in his life. The first was waiting for the birth of his first baby, and the second was choosing a new club for his football career. At that time, clubs like Manchester City, PSG, and Bayern Munich were interested in him. De Bruyne was confused about where to live with his new family after Michelle gave birth. Stressed, really stressed. That's what De Bruyne experienced. Plus, when he was indecisive about choosing a club, his wife complained of pain while pregnant. A new father-to-be, De Bruyne was very worried about Michelle's condition, especially because of her pregnancy. Without waiting long, Michelle was rushed to the hospital. It was the worst moment of his life. He was anxiously awaiting the results of his wife's examination, but at the same time, De Bruyne had to think about where to anchor next season. Thankfully, De Bruyne's wife and his pregnancy turned out to be fine, but since then he began to reflect. De Bruyne realized that all the things that had happened to him in football were nothing compared to the state of his wife and child. Yes, since having a wife, plus his first son was born, De Bruyne has changed a lot. He is a responsible father of a family, not just for himself anymore, but for his children and wife. The birth of a son named Mason Millian De Bruyne in 2015 brought its own blessings for De Bruyne, because in the 2015-16 season, he finally had a new club, Manchester City. De Bruyne brought Michelle and Millian with him to Manchester. They met their compatriot, Vincent Kompany, and his wife Carla Higgs, who is also a friend of Michelle. De Bruyne's new life as a father began in England. The comfort of joining Manchester City increased when he met Pep Guardiola. According to De Bruyne, Pep and himself have the same mentality on the pitch, which is to be a winner. De Bruyne remembers very well when he met the bald manager for the first time at Manchester City. De Bruyne was told to sit down and talk one-on-one by Pep. With full confidence, Pep said that De Bruyne would become a top 5 player in the world in time. De Bruyne was surprised. He had never heard those words from any coach. He admitted that the sentence motivated him a lot. Since then, he has wanted to prove that Pep's words are true and will become a reality one day. His contact with Pep's style of football has somehow turned De Bruyne into a more bouncy football career. He absorbed a lot of knowledge from Pep Guardiola. That's because while at Etihad, he often communicates only about tactics and football philosophy with Pep. De Bruyne did not hesitate to steal free time besides training time just to chat intimately about some of these things with the Saint-Pédor-born coach. Although De Bruyne has finally become Pep's mainstay player at Manchester City, he is still being questioned about his personality. Now it is his wife who is questioning. It's no longer about him being quiet, angry, or stubborn, but about his heart and feelings. Despite being a sociable person off the pitch, De Bruyne, according to his wife, likes to hide his feelings in front of others. According to Michelle, De Bruyne is strange. Since she got married, she has never seen her husband cry. Be it at his wedding, when he lost a loved one, or the birth of his child. Michelle finally wondered, was her husband's heart frozen, or did he deliberately hide his feelings in front of others? His wife only found out that her husband could cry when De Bruyne was badly injured. De Bruyne had cried endlessly, thinking about the severe ligament injury he suffered. Michelle was initially confused. Her husband, who never cried, suddenly whined like a child just because of an injury. De Bruyne was very worried about the continuity of his football career. Michelle was then able to learn a lesson from the incident. She understood how much her husband cared about her football career. Since then, Michelle no longer dared to talk much about football to her husband. Michelle is afraid of saying the wrong thing that might disturb him. Yes, De Bruyne's beliefs about football have never wavered. It is not uncommon for those who do not conform to his beliefs to be cursed at, no matter who it is. Once upon a time, his seniors at Manchester City, David Silva and Fernandinho, were sprayed by De Bruyne. The incident occurred in Manchester City's match against Napoli in the 2017-18 Champions League season.
Let me talk! Let me talk! Let me talk! Let me talk!
When the City players headed to the stadium hallway after halftime, De Bruyne was caught on camera shouting at David Silva, who captained the match. The Belgian midfielder also shouted, let me talk," at Fernandinho. De Bruyne's emotions were completely out of control. His emotions overflowed because his beliefs about football were trying to be blocked by David Silva and Fernandinho. Silva and Fernandinho at that time told De Bruyne to stay focused on the field and not protest too much about the referee. Evidently, De Bruyne is indiscriminate when spraying people. He doesn't like to be obstructed. Even his wife doesn't dare. He feels that what he believes and does on the field is the most correct. In fact, his coach, Pep Guardiola, has also been the target of his spray several times. How brave is De Bruyne? Doesn't he know that Pep doesn't hesitate to kick problematic and unruly players? Players like Joao Cancelo, for example. He had problems with Pep and eventually became a victim. However, what happened to Cancelo was not accepted by De Bruyne. Once upon a time, De Bruyne was replaced by Pep Guardiola. At that time, Manchester City played the first leg of the quarter-final against Bayern Munich in the 2022-23 season. There, De Bruyne was the only player who was replaced, even though De Bruyne played quite well. Of course, the Belgian player was furious. He didn't even want to be spoken to by Pep when he left the field. However, Pep was not angry with him. He softened and tried to persuade De Bruyne to listen to his reasons. The incident was still better than the incident against Real Madrid in the Champions League semi-finals last season. This time, De Bruyne even vulgarly cursed Pep on the sidelines. Initially, Pep was worried that De Bruyne would continue to carry the ball and City could easily lose the ball. Then Pep immediately reprimanded him on the sidelines loudly. Instead of receiving input from Pep, De Bruyne was angry and immediately swore at Pep. Seeing De Bruyne's attitude, Pep tried to understand him. Pep was not angry and did not take offense. Pep understands De Bruyne is very ambitious in football just like him. A similar incident happened again this season. De Bruyne was angry when he was substituted in the match against Liverpool in the Premier League. De Bruyne had an argument with Pep when he left the field, but again, Pep let it go. The bald coach even tried to explain nicely to De Bruyne while on the bench. In fact, Pep said after the match that he was happy when he saw De Bruyne angry.
No problem. I like it. If he's upset, it's good. So.
Yes, despite his unique personality and bitter life story, De Bruyne is now rewarded with various successes in his life. He is a person who is willing to learn from some bitter experiences in the past. Being an outcast and being betrayed about his love did not make De Bruyne just give up on life. De Bruyne continues to move forward with the support of his belief in football that has never been extinguished. His parents, wife, and cute child are also part of what has changed De Bruyne's life so much. De Bruyne can easily move on from all the problems in his past, thanks to them. Oh yes, don't forget the figure of Pep Guardiola. Although they often fuss like Tom and Jerry, however, their relationship cannot be separated from the success of Manchester City so far.
What's your relationship like with Pep?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't see any issue.
However, Kevin De Bruyne's success in the world of football does not necessarily make the Belgian man complacent. He does not forget the other things that happen around him. Learning from the bitterness of his life in the past, De Bruyne is now a person with a high social spirit. De Bruyne has established a charitable foundation called the Kevin De Bruyne Foundation. The foundation was launched to support and empower underprivileged children around the world. Not only that, De Bruyne is also involved in another charity campaign called Common Goal. This campaign facilitates professional football players to donate 1% of their salary to support various social causes. In addition, De Bruyne also frequently donates to support cancer research and is involved in a number of charity matches. The blonde-haired player also has his own clothing brand called KDB, which is active in social causes, like when the profits are donated to a charity organization that deals with children with disabilities called Special Olympics. In the end, life experiences have changed the man born in Drongen. At the age of 32, he has already achieved a lot. Of course, the most memorable and imprinted for him was when the Citizens won the treble winner last season. In his interview with the Player Tribune, he did not forget to end it with an interesting word, nirvana, one word that represents the journey of his life. Kevin De Bruyne is very satisfied that he has achieved his goals in his own way.
I just want to play every game and push and help the team, and there's nothing better than to play a game and help the team achieve what they want to achieve.